Welcome to Alabama Manufacturing Now, hosted by Alabama Technology Network, a podcast where we cover a wide array of challenges, solutions, and innovations for manufacturers. We're your host, Whitney Barlow, Supplier Development Manager. And I'm Paige Caulfield, Marketing and PR Manager.
Welcome back to ATN's Alabama Manufacturing Now. We are excited to be here today. I'm Whitney and this is Paige with ATN. And today we are privileged enough to have the Alabama Port Authority, our state port, one of my most favorite things to talk about in Alabama. It's Rick Clark, our Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer. How are you today, Rick?
Doing great. Just a great time to be in Alabama, right? And a great time to be working in a state that really is focused on growing.
Oh, that is fantastic.
Wonderful.
I know it's a great time of the year. How about you give us a kind of a brief overview, or you can give more than a brief overview about the Port Authority and its key responsibilities to this region.
Super. Well, look, I really like to start and tell a little bit about who we are.
Okay.
You know, the state's port here, 11th largest port in the country by tonnage. We're the third largest coal port in the country by tonnage. That coal almost exclusively coming out of our central Alabama mines. That's coal for making steel, not for making energy.
Oh.
And we can talk more about that as we go along, unless you had a question about that.
Well, that's pretty interesting. I did not know that's what that our coal coming out of there was used for steel, not energy. That's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Number two, steel port in the country by tonnage. Number one, if you talk about that by break bulk. So steel could move in containers. Steel could move in a bulk fashion, that is not containerized or unitized at all. It could be ingots of steel, for instance, but in a break bulk fashion, that's lifting units, larger units of steel. We're number one in the country for that. We're one of the fastest growing, have been the fastest growing container port in the country since 2015. Forbes in earlier this year, I believe February, came out and said we're the second fastest growing port in the country. That's on top of seaports, airports, and border crossings. So a lot happening here size-wise, but a pretty big, we think about Alabama and you think about we don't have a great waterfront, but what we do have is a great locality on Mobile Bay, an inland facility that's in a protected waterway that is really super located in kind of central Gulf Coast, that is really in a great spot to serve all of the Gulf Coast, East Coast, in Central America, in central parts of America as well. So just a great spot to be on. What is a port? A lot of times people ask me, what is a port? And we consider ourselves a ramp to a global highway. The port, what is a port? Think about the ocean is a global highway. The ships are the vehicles that are traveling that ocean highway. We're the ramp that gets you on and off, our industries, our businesses on and off that global highway to markets around the world. So basically, we're a ramp to get you in a competitive place to market your goods and services all over the world. And that's just a little bit of who we are and what are we doing, right?
That's fascinating.
That is. I didn't even think about it like that way. It's a global highway. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. That's yeah. So tell me, do you have any, what's the contribution economically to the state of Alabama? I know that we a lot of times hear it in speeches, and by the time it probably gets in a speech, not by you, Rick, but by it's thrown into a mix. I think that really the local people need to know that's listening to this podcast, what is that really contribution the port gives?
Mm-hmm.
It's a surprising number, really. About every 3 years, the port undertakes a study to talk about its economic impact, not just to its state itself, but also to the nation. In 2022, we had the last one completed come out that said we are a $98 billion economic value to the state of Alabama. And I say 100 billion, but $98 billion contribution of economic value to the state. 130 billion in the nation.
Wow.
$2.5 billion of state and local tax contributions. 350,000 jobs. That's 1 in 7 jobs in Alabama connected to an import or an export cargo that comes through the state's port here in the port of Mobile. So it's a really significant piece of an economic engine for the state of Alabama. I like to say, and we're here and growing. And what's really significant about that was that number in 2019 was $26 billion.
Oh my gosh.
So we've more than tripled. It's exciting to talk about that it's almost $100 billion of economic value today. But since 2019, that number's more than tripled. And a lot of that's before a significant amount of investment to help grow with the rest of the state's industries. And really, it's the state's industries that are driving this. It's not, the port doesn't grow as a port in itself. The port grows because there's the demand from the state's industry. And as our state's industries grow, we see that significant demand. And we are racing to keep up with Alabama and manufacturing and businesses here that just continue to see great successes.
That is amazing. 98 billion. So the tripling it, and you hear a lot of talk about it. Explain to us what exactly you're talking about in the investment. What improvements, what's on the horizon, what's currently going with the port and changing with the industry to keep up?
Look, we can't, as I mentioned, we are racing to keep up with Alabama and Alabama's growth. Super excited and a little bit about, I mean, we really serve every county in the state, all 67 counties. I have spent the last 2.5, 3 years trying to visit almost every one of these counties, whether I was talking to NASA or Redstone or Mazda Toyota up in the Huntsville area, or talking to poultry processors in Guntersville or finished lumber producers in Abbeville, or automobile producers, Mercedes in Bessemer, or the coal mines in central Alabama. Or maybe we talk about the Hyundai plant in Montgomery, but there's just so much happening. But what are we doing to keep up with that? We're in a $1 billion investment cycle right now, $1 billion of investment to try to keep up with that. That's led by probably what is the biggest piece of that investment now is a deepening and widening of our channels project. And there's probably people have heard a lot about it, or maybe some haven't heard anything. But today the port's vessel size is limited by the depth of the water. So the deepest a ship that could come in here today, its deepest draft, or how deep that vessel is in the water, it's limited to 45 feet. That's a pretty good sized ship, and you'd think that's pretty good. But the new vessels that the industry is building to service all of these industries around the world are building bigger vessels that need more water than that. And the reason for that is economies of scale. So what's happened is we were quickly getting to a point that we weren't going to be able to compete unless we dredged and this channel to a deeper point. We wouldn't be able to take these larger ships to bring those economies of scale into Alabama. So a $366 million project led by the Corps of Engineers to deepen and widen that channel to 50 feet, from 45 to 50 feet. You think, well, what does 5 feet mean? 5 feet more of water. Let's talk in the ways of a container ship. A container ship today that comes in today, our capacity for that size vessel is about 7,500 TEUs, or 20-foot equivalent units. That's a 20-foot box, 20-foot long, 8-foot wide, 8-foot high. And that's how they measured containers across the globe in 20-foot equivalent units. That's as big a vessel as we can get here because of that water, the depth of the water. When we get to 50 feet, we will be able to double that size.
Oh, wow.
And the new ships that are building are the 14,000, 15,000 TEU size vessels. So we had to deepen and widen to compete in that market, but we needed to deepen and widen to bring those economies of scale that those larger vessels could do. We're trying to match the Panama Canal's expansion and capabilities. Panama Canal had an expansion project finished in 2015. That's been a big driver of our growth. But we couldn't take the biggest vessels that could come through there. 50 feet won't just get us all that additional economy of scale, but it makes us the deepest container port in the Gulf. No other port will have this much water in the Gulf. So we are following, we are leading. What makes that really significant? Imagine the vessel has loaded in Asia, a full vessel. It's too deep to go into any other ports in the Gulf Coast first. It has to come to this port first, and because it's so deep, it's so full, it comes to this port, and because it's here first, other cargo tends to come off so it can get to its destination faster. Now, most of these vessels don't just come to Mobile. They come to Mobile. They come to New Orleans. They go to Houston. They make multiple ports of call, but now they're going to come here first. We're going to bring those bigger ships in here, and they're going to come here first to lighten up before they go to the next ports that can't take all that commodity. It brings greater economies to this area, which means it's going to attract more industry to this area because of its competitive stance in the Gulf and on the Gulf Coast. Another great example was the coal ships that we moved today. Today we move a coal ship that will load 130,000 tons of that central Alabama coal to make steel with. It goes all over the world to make steel, to steel making plants. Then we'll have to bring a sister ship next to it, load 30,000 tons. Both of those ships go offshore to deep water. The little ship moves its cargo to the big ship before it goes to its destination. Because it couldn't put all the cargo in the big ship at the dock because there's not enough water.
Oh.
We get to 50 feet and we only have to load one ship now. And think of all the economies that it brings to our mining groups here in Alabama and how much more competitive. To give it what's really important to that. Remember, these ships may be going to Japan. Let's say use that as only 2 other countries really mine this quality of coal in any quantity for making steel. Australia, Mongolia are a couple of those countries that do it in any major way. Yet we're able to compete in a market out of Alabama in Japan. Well, look
awesome.
how much closer Australia is than that. So we're going to continue to create better mousetraps for our industries in Alabama. And those are just a couple of those things. Our container terminal, we're right now undergoing another phase 4 expansion. Our capacity at that container terminal today is about 650,000 TEUs a year. During our phase 4 expansion will take us to better than 1 million TEUs a year. And we're already starting phase 5. And before we haven't even completed the first piece of phase 4 expansion, and we're already getting phase 5. I've mentioned we're racing to keep up with the markets and we're racing to keep up with the industry. That phase 5 expansion will take us to 2 million TEUs.
Wow.
So almost 4 times the capacities that we have. And if you think about what I mentioned earlier, about that 98 billion total economic impact that we have to the state, we had tripled between 2019 and 2022. Well, I just talked about almost quadrupling the throughput capacities for our container terminal. What does that mean in the next 3 to 4 years to that economic value brought in? And just a few of those investments that are underway. The Montgomery Intermodal or Montgomery Inland Port Facility you may have heard about. Another way to expand our capacities of the port as you see properties become more and more difficult to get and and we are limited to an actual footprint because there's just not that much property on the water. So how do you expand without that? You look for an inland position near your industries that really need this cargo, and you put your cargo on a train. So it comes off the ship. In the next hour or two, it's on a train. In the next few hours, that train's moving that cargo that was to Montgomery, where it will serve an auto industry. Now, instead of that auto industry having to drive hours to get their cargo down here, they drive 2 miles to get their cargo from that inland port facility. And so you start seeing the economies that brings to our industries there. And the Montgomery Inland Facility is just the first. That's the first of our inland routes to bring containers into the state. Today, Montgomery, tomorrow, Birmingham, the next day, Decatur, Huntsville area. So we're trying to make sure that all our industries throughout the state have a better way or an alternative way to move containers inland versus just by truck.
That's fantastic.
Maybe that's a few things. That's just a few of those things that are going on today.
Well, the more you talk, the more proud I become to be an Alabamian. I'm like, this is fantastic. This is amazing. Paige, what do you think?
It's a lot of information, and I don't think I actually knew how much that they do down there. I mean,
we got to get a tour.
Yeah, we got to get a tour. Maggie, we're going to be calling you soon. Rick, let's talk a little bit about technology. Technology always is evolving. So what role does technology play in improving the efficiency and safety of port operations?
Look, certainly, and particularly today, it's probably never had more of an impact than it's had over the last 10 or 15 years. And we see things go in leaps and bounds. 15, 20 years ago, a truck would come to deliver cargo, and he would get out of, he'd pull up to a gate, he'd get out of his gate, and he'd bring a bunch of paperwork to a window, a teller window, if you will. Like you might have done it. And he would exchange, and while he was there, he would get instructions on where to go with his cargo, and the cargo would go in the yard. Today, 10 years later, there's a pneumatic tube that he puts his paperwork in, and he doesn't get out of the truck, right?
No.
And that pneumatic tube, just like you would have seen at a bank teller, and they exchange information. They give him the information of the delivery. The tube brings him back a slip that says, take your cargo to this place in the yard. There'll be somebody waiting there to unload you when you get there. Today, that driver goes online, makes a appointment where he pre-receives his cargo at the terminal, and he makes an appointment for the time he's going to arrive. So the driver pulls into the gate today. He punches a PIN number into a keypad. It spits out a direction for where he's going to go in the yard to deliver his cargo. At the same time, he is told what cargo he's picking up. That information goes to machinery in the yard that says truck A is coming to position B to pick up this cargo. He goes to that position. That piece of equipment is waiting to put that delivery onto his truck, or first to take that delivery he brought in off his truck, put it in a space. Then he goes to spot B where there's a piece of equipment waiting to go on his truck. All of it done electronically. What might have been an hour to get in and out, an hour and a half, now it's 20 minutes. Give just some ideas of what those technologies have done today. The systems at the same time, we've got thousands and thousands of those containers, let's say, that have many different types of commodities and numbers. And there's a optimization system that's telling when he made that appointment, it's looking at where's the best place for this to go when it arrives. So when you bring your cargo into the terminal, where amongst those thousands of containers is it going to be best positioned to expedite its next move onto a ship.
That's really
And
impressive.
the same system that are telling it when it comes off the ship, where am I going to put it in the yard to best accommodate that truck driver's pickup for the fastest turnaround? So there's this great, we think about technology. I remember doing it by hand and with pictures. And today it's video boxes on a screen. And tomorrow it's an AI that is looking at all this data, and it's saying, here are trends that will help us further optimize your time in the terminal and the equipment's movement through a terminal. So really exciting opportunities. And I think about a truck driver. His time is so valuable, and the amount, how fast can we get him in and out? And the same thing happens whether you're taking it to a train or to a truck driver. Those same kind of information exchanges continue to move. So really exciting. There's a ship tracking software that we follow. So we see when the ships are arriving before any kind of communication. We see when they're departing. We can see where they are. We can see how fast they're moving. We can see them getting in queue because our port is on through the bay and on a river. And all those, not unlike an airport, we've got a river traffic controller, if you will. We call him a harbor master. And we handle about 135 ships a month in and out of here. But and a lot of times they try to all come on the same day.
Of course.
But it's a 1 or 2 lane highway in and out of here for those big vessels, depending on the size. So somebody is watching those movements. We've got somebody that's controlling to make sure we maximize the number of ships that can come and go in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of holdup for those traffic and congestions. And we're one of the fortunate ports that we have very little congestion. Ships arrive and we move them in and out of here pretty fast.
Well, that's what we like to hear because I need my Amazon delivery, Rick.
That's right.
I expect that to be at my front door within a day, That's our expectation.
Yeah, and they get upset when they don't get something on
2-day
time.
delivery, isn't that it?
That's exactly right.
That's what they say, but here lately it's been about 3.
It is.
So
it's disheartening when you get used to it.
I know. Rick, so how is the Alabama Port Authority addressing environmental concerns? Are there any initiatives or any plans?
Absolutely. And look, everything we do, you heard a lot about our growth and a lot about what we're doing every day to meet and exceed expectations, make us competitive here in Alabama in our industries. But a couple of things that are happening right now. We run a short line railroad here as well. We've operated 75 miles of railroad track. We've got 9 locomotives. Those locomotives serve other rail services. We have 5 Class 1 rail services. Those are the Class 1 rail services are the CSXs, the Norfolk Southerns, the Canadian Nationals, the big guys that take your cargo all over the country on these big trains. Well, we're a small railroad that takes that cargo from them and exchanges it locally with their customers. So we've got this short line railroad with these 9 locomotives. They're all diesel burning locomotives. But over the last 6 years, we've been converting those to what they call a Tier 4 final emissions locomotive. So we have locomotives today that, if you look on the side, the cleanest burning diesel locomotives in the world. And they're touted to have emissions that are cleaner than the air they take in. So some pretty significant conversions. We're in the process, and we're looking at markets to actually replace some of these diesels with electric engines. So the electric engines are pretty new. There are a few electric locomotives in use today in the central parts of the country, and they've been pretty effective and are working pretty well. So today we're actually starting to look at the opportunities to electrify these locomotives. Now, not only we're not burning diesel anymore, but we're going to try to convert some and move away even from those fossil fuel burning locomotives, even though they're very clean burning, and we continue to move those towards that. What's the next step? The next step, an engine that doesn't use fossil fuels at all. All across the port, we've continued to electrify. Almost all of our lift equipment today, our cranes, our major big equipment is almost all electrified today. So we don't those aren't big diesel machines that burn a lot of fuel. They're electric. Even the smaller trucks and vehicles that we're using, they've become more hybrid vehicles that are electric, diesel, electric, gas, and converting into eventual electrics as well. A little bit down the road before everything's electric, not unlike what you see with automobiles today. We've seen that kind of conversion, gas to hybrid, and then hybrid to all electric. And we're seeing, but that's happening in all of our equipment as we make those transitions. Some of the bigger equipment takes longer. Obviously, it takes more power. If you've got a piece of equipment that you run or use kind of a 24-hour a day, for instance, when does it charge? Right. So you still have some of those challenges that you have to work through to meet some of those obligations. Another piece, what we talked about earlier, was how do we build resilience in our transportation systems? One of them, I talked about this rail system that's going to move containers inland into Alabama. Well, not only does it help grow the port, but it moves cargo from Mobile to Montgomery or to Birmingham or to Huntsville on a train where one or two locomotives pull 100 rail cars. So the green footprint to move that one train to move 100 rail cars is certainly a lot better than one truck to one container or one truck to one piece of cargo, right? So as we leverage one change, we get to use and leverage that to improve our footprint, our environmental footprint at the same time. It gets trucks off the road. It reduces that amount of congestion and traffic. And it does that in a really environmentally conscious way, and provides at the same time resiliency for our industries. Now I can move by truck, and I can move by train. So I have more than one way to get it if you have a failure in one system or the other. And creating those redundancies are pretty significant.
That's tremendous.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And as someone that uses I-65 a lot, that excites me.
Right. So just think today, what we're looking at here in a couple of years, when we open this new Montgomery Inland facility, it will take hundreds, thousands of trucks off the road that are moving between here and there. So really exciting opportunity. And when we were in the pandemic, one of the things some of our industries in Central Alabama said, I can't get trucks.
Yeah.
What can we do? Well, what can we do? We build another terminal and we bring it to you by train. And so now we built that additional resiliency in the system. So really, it's a little bit of a symbiotic relationship, and a snowball of effect, if you will. You improve one area, and it helps to improve the next area. And it's kind of where we are today. We think about our growth and what's happening. It's a snowball, right? Number 3 largest automobile manufacturing state in the country now. One of the largest commercial aircraft producers in the state today, or in the world, here at Airbus. And the port is an integral part of making those things happen and connecting those pieces. So it's really exciting.
It is really exciting. I mean, I'm thinking like you said, the redundancy to be able to give a manufacturer in Central Alabama to be able to have two ways to transport their material back and forth from the port. That's huge.
Yes.
That's a tremendous thing.
You know, what we recognized and saw, one of the things during the pandemic, the biggest ports, the ones that did most of the import and export for all of the U.S., L.A., Long Beach, New York, New Jersey, they were the big mousetraps, had forever been very efficient mousetraps. Suddenly, during the pandemic, they can't move everything anymore. Mm-hmm. And our problem was it created an economic impact all over the country because we didn't have other options for those. Today, and one of the things that makes our port so popular, it's giving them alternatives and creating additional alternative solutions to move their cargo. And so we're certainly in this great position to help assure, not just for Alabama, but nationally, to make sure that we have resilient supply chain solutions that aren't all putting all the eggs in one basket. And so when something happens there, you don't have 80 ships backed up and all your cargo's delayed for, significantly, and our whole economy starts to suffer. So we're really excited about how we can contribute to that resiliency here.
Look
as
at
we
us.
grow.
We're like Rudy. We're Rudy. We're coming in strong and hard. I love it.
Right
the movie.
On. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So tell us a little bit about workforce. I know, are you the anomaly? I shouldn't have tried a word that hard. Anomaly. Did I say it right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Nobody will ever know.
Are you, or is there a workforce issue there at the port?
Look, so a challenge for everyone here as the state continues to grow. Workforce is a challenge for everyone to try to make sure that we have the people that we need to continue growing our industries. We work really closely with the South Alabama Workforce Development Council, for instance, on how do we find ways to improve our workforces, or how do we get people back to work?
Yes.
A lot of it, we have very low unemployment rates today, right?
Correct.
So where do people come from? But it's interesting to talk about, we have very low unemployment rates, but we also don't have a really high participation rate in the workforce.
Yes.
And so how do we encourage, one of the things we have to work on is how do we find ways to encourage people to get into the workforce, right? And so one of the things, and how do we encourage our youth to prepare for positions that they can succeed in and then want to enter the workforce, right? That I want to be part of this economy. And here's how we can get successful. You need to get out early in high school years and to try to meet with these groups and to teach them about their opportunities in the future here in Alabama. We want you to stay and we need you to stay, and there are great opportunities here in Alabama, and we need to teach you about them, and we need to prepare you so when you do come out of school, when you do get out of high school, you don't necessarily have to go to college. That's just one option, but we need to start and have them prepared. And one of the things we talk about today is we are seeing younger and younger workforces today. Because that's where they're going to come from. We can't wait for them to come out of school and get years of experience and then hire them. We have to hire them today, and we have to provide their mentoring and their training and get them skills. But we also have to make sure they know how to find those routes to those opportunities. So really, that's really what is workforce development for us. We're real fortunate. We're seeing a lot of people coming into Alabama. They're moving from other states or maybe are not as attractive today for employment opportunities. Maybe the weather's not as good as it is there as it is here, right? But but even those folks, we've got to make sure there's housing. You've got to make sure there's housing for that growth in the additional people that it's taking to meet the growth of our industries. So there's a great deal that goes on, both with local communities. I talked about workforce development councils, community colleges.
Yes.
Very closely working a lot with the community colleges to help. We're not just looking for 4-year degree people, but also a technical skilled capacities. And how do we get these kids in and get them trained, or bring people in from other places? How do we attract more employees into Alabama to get these jobs? And that's what we're working really hard. Community, legislature, our government, and our industries together. It really is a hand in hand. It takes all of us to do it, right? Things even like we're doing today. Communicate how important it is, so we get the resources that are needed to help promote those things.
That's right.
That's great. Because I always think that it would be so cool to work at a port. Like, there's so many different moving parts, and it's just the logistics alone would be almost like a puzzle that you're putting together every single day. And you get a lot of satisfaction to know you're providing. Number one, you're putting them on a global highway, and then number two, you're providing resources to all these people in the United States by delivering products and turning around raw products and raw materials. It's a really cool opportunity.
I will say that's one.
We love to talk about the port.
Yes,
we love to talk about the port, but I can try to give you a visual while I talk to you about it, but until you see it, you don't really get the scope. It's hard to see the scope of what really happens on a day-to-day basis. All the different types of commodities that are moving through here, and coming out of Alabama, right? This is Alabama production, and it really fun.
Yeah, you mentioned when you went through all your different counties that you've gone to and visited, you literally, Rick, said every single sector of industry that you touch, from agriculture to steel and everything in between. And that's what I think is so impressive that we have, and that we have made a presence in the United States and around the world, that we are definitely here to compete, and we are here to be seen and heard. And that's huge. Is it not, Paige? I'm excited. We got to call Maggie. I don't know why I keep saying you got to call Maggie. I got to call Maggie.
I mean, I can call Maggie. But...
we're excited.
We have about 4,000 acres that we're working on down here.
Good gracious.
2.5 million square foot of warehousing, over 2.5 million square foot of space to put down large articles, steel, lumber, refrigerated warehousing, significant to move the poultry. Poultry is another big industry here that we talked about earlier, but it's a big space and a lot of stuff moving through, and it's not enough. We continue to move and grow. We've got to continue to grow with it.
In 5 feet, that 5 feet can make that much of an impact. Yeah. That's amazing to me.
So continuing on with the theme of, the future and looking ahead, what are the Alabama Port Authority's key goals or strategic priorities for the next 5 to 10 years?
Look, some of it was a lot of what we've talked about today is we need to connect with the Alabama industries and our economic development groups to make sure we understand what the vision is for the industry, the industry's growth here, and we are positioning ourselves to meet that growth. We're a huge timber industry state, right? So we've got to make sure we're meeting and preparing for that timber industry to grow. We're a big poultry state. We've got to make sure that we're ready to move. I like to say we move rocket parts to chicken feet. We move a little bit of everything. I wish we had more time. I'll tell you some about that another day. But it really is true. From peanuts to chicken feet to rocket parts, we move all of it, right? But what is growing? We talked about the airline industry here that it continues to boom. The Alabama steel manufacturing industry continues to grow and move. The automobile production. What are those? We've got to make sure we've identified the areas of the industries and the areas of Alabama's growth that will continue to need import and export market opportunities, global market opportunities that we can grow and meet. I talked about $1 billion worth of investment that are underway today to meet a lot of that growth. but that's growth that we're looking over in the next 4 to 8 years, right? What's out there in the next 15 years? We talk about electric vehicles. How do we prepare to make sure that we move or can help meet those industry standards and those new energy requirement standards? We talk with someone every day about new alternative energy sources for ships that come and go and the cargoes that move that aren't necessarily gas or diesel or oil driven. What are those new fuel requirements that are going to be needed to fuel the industries of tomorrow? So all of those things, what's really important, we work together to identify what those opportunities look like in the future. And you stick your neck out a little bit to say, this is where we see it next, and get the best information you have to make sure you're investing ahead. If we don't do it today, someone else will take it. If we're not prepared, we've got to be a step ahead of everybody else. We talked about 50 foot of water. We're not waiting for the other ports of Alabama to deepen and widen their channel, or the Gulf Coast to deepen and widen their channels. We're doing it today. We want to be ahead of all of them.
Yes.
And that's what we have to do with all of our industry.
That's exactly right. And then the fact that you have the inland port or the intermodal, that's tremendous to me. We are located all over the state with ATNs located in the community colleges, Rick, but Paige and I are located in Montgomery's, right in downtown, and that is where I'm from, is Central Alabama. So knowing that's going to be there, I'm very excited about the opportunities that's going to give to manufacturers locally in Central Alabama. And then you alluded to the fact that that's not the last one. You plan to move on up the state, so that's going to be tremendous.
Absolutely. So what we want to do is bring the port to our industries, right?
Love it.
And so it just gives them better marketability. And we have to compete in these global markets, and we have to give them efficient and economical ways to do that better. We have to build a better mousetrap, and that's what we're working to do.
That's exciting.
Awesome.
I'm very excited. I can't wait. Well, Rick, do you have anything else that I think we've really covered the gamut? I still feel like we could be on here for 2 more hours with you, because now I'm really intrigued with rocket ship to chicken feet. But I'll just have to hold that and see when I come for the tour. But is there anything else that we've not asked or left off? I feel like we've covered from A to Z, very high level, but still covered A to Z. What do you think?
You know, it's really hard. So I'll get asked to speak to organizations, and I'll ask, well, how much time do we have? I think about it is so much more difficult to talk for 20 minutes than it is for an hour.
Yes.
I said, but if you want to give me 2, I'll wear you out. Right? There's such a big future. And what I like to say, we have to build relationships. If there's anything that we have to do, we've got to build relationships between the communities and the industries and our governmental leaders. I think something that Alabama is doing very well today, but we have to continue to build these relationships that are going to allow us to have those visions and to hear about the needs and demands for the future. We've got to continue to build these relationships and nurture these relationships between, whether it's the port and Montgomery legislature and our governments, or the industries, the automobile industries or the mining industry. We have to continue to build those relationships so we know what their needs are, and they're comfortable in communicating. We're so comfortable to pick up the phone and talk to somebody and say, hey, I have an idea, and no idea is a crazy idea, right?
I love that.
And that we feel comfortable enough to talk about those things. And that's how we make those next big steps. And I tell all of my employees, think big. If you think small, you win small.
Correct.
Think big, we'll win big.
I love that. That is the perfect way to end.
We need to put that on a shirt.
We do. Think small, you win small. Think big, win big. I love that. Rick, how can anyone that's interested in coming to work at the port or reaching out to talk to you about potentially being a customer of the port, how can they get in touch with someone at the port, or how can they get more information?
look, the best way to get us is on our website, alports.com, alports.com. It's a great website. There's a lot of information.
There is.
We talked about economic benefit. It tells you the economic benefit for every county and district that you have. It really breaks it down so you can see specifically what your benefit is. But it also lists a lot of our leaders here, names, contacts, etc., that you can go on. I've spent a career over 40 years connecting industry and businesses to global markets. That's what we're here to do, to help our Alabama businesses succeed in competing in these global markets. Go online, find our information there. If they have questions, email me, call me. My contacts are there. I'm standing by to help them succeed.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Thank you, Rick. We again want to thank you for joining us today and being with us. We really appreciated all the information and is really excited to see somebody so passionate about their role and what they do at the port. So we thank you for that. And we will see you next time, guys. Thank you.